In this program, I'm going to be going over an article that I recently wrote entitled Why Israel Will Likely Strike Iran's Nuclear Sites. The article is available at our website online at www.prophecydepot.com. I'm going to provide 9 valid reasons why this is a likely scenario and probably very soon. I'm going to support it also with some current events and headlines that also suggest the same. We'll start with a headline that came out recently, November 22nd of 2024, from the Jerusalem Post. The headline reads, "Conditions are ripe to strike Iran's nuclear program," a security official says. It goes on to say, Iran has never been more vulnerable to strikes against its nuclear capabilities, this official said. The official added that Israel will not allow a nuclear Iran and therefore will continue to prepare to strike the nuclear project. Don't be surprised to wake up one nearby morning to this sort of headline, folks. Maybe perhaps even by the same Jerusalem Post, it might read something like, Israel conducts devastating strikes against Iran's nuclear sites. Day by day, this becomes more of a likelihood and a reality. And in fact, not too long ago, they destroyed the Parchin facility, as this headline points out here, from JNS on November 26, 2024. Israel destroyed secret Iranian nuclear site in October. The facility in Parchin was completely destroyed during Israel's October 26 attack on Iran, according to satellite imagery. Okay, let's look at these 9 reasons why Israel will likely strike Iran's nuclear sites. We'll look at all 9 of them in order, and then I will subsequently unpack each one individually. We start with number 1. Israel has a history of striking nuclear facilities. Number 2, Israel has the Bean Doctrine, established by Menachem Begin in 1981. Number 3, Israel has vowed to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Number 4, Israel has destroyed Iran's primary missile defense systems, rendering Iran vulnerable to an Israeli strike on its nuclear facilities. Number 5, Israel will likely have America's approval through the presidency of Donald Trump for such a strike. Let's look at number 6. Israel will not likely face severe retaliation from Iran's proxies. Number 7, Israel has destroyed most of Syria's missile defense systems, which enables more freedom to fly safely to Iran over Syrian airspace. Number 8, Israel has to act now because Iran is on the fast track to obtaining several nuclear bombs. And number 9, biblically, an ancient Bible prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 34 through 39, may foretell of such a nuclear strike. Okay, so let's look at number 1 reason in this list of 9. Israel has a history of striking nuclear facilities. In modern history, Israel has struck 2 Middle East nuclear facilities. One was in Iraq, and the other one was in Syria. We'll look at Iraq first, and what was called Operation Opera. In a surprise attack on June 7, 1981, which was interestingly the 14-year anniversary of Israel's 6-day war against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, Israel destroyed Iraq's unfinished Osirak nuclear reactor. This is when the Bean Doctrine was established, which is a very important doctrine I'll be going over shortly with you. And let's look at the Syria attack. It was called Operation Orchard, acting in accordance with the Bean Doctrine. On September 6 of 2007, Israel conducted a preemptive airstrike that destroyed a suspected nuclear reactor at the Al-Kibar site in Syria. So we already see Israel has a history of striking nuclear facilities. This Bean Doctrine is very important. Number 2, Israel has the Bean Doctrine by Menachem Begin in 1981. Menachem Begin was the first prime minister of the Likud, I think it was in 1977. And this is a quote from Wikipedia that explains this doctrine very well. I'll read it to you. Let's read it together. The Bean Doctrine is the common term for the Israeli government's preventative strike counterproliferation policy regarding their potential enemies' capability to possess weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, particularly nuclear weapons. The doctrine itself was enunciated by Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin in June of 1981, following Israel's attack on Iraq's nuclear reactor in Osirak in Operation Opera, which we just talked about. This doctrine remains a feature of Israeli security planning. The interesting backstory of how this Doctrine got implemented was told to me by Israeli envoy to the USA, Yoram Edinger. This is in 2014 at a breakfast meeting. At that time, White House correspondent Bill Koenig and I, we sat down together with Yoram, and we asked him if he thought Israel would strike Iran's nuclear sites. And then he responded by introducing us to this Bean Doctrine, the first time I'd ever heard of it. He said, sometime in the first half of 1981, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, he called together all of Israel's top military and key political leaders in a closed-door meeting to discuss how to handle Iraq's nuclear program. The potential of Iraq possessing a nuclear weapon posed an existential threat to the Jewish state. Begin sought these leaders' opinions about the potential outcomes of an Israeli preemptive strike on the nuclear reactor, the Osirak nuclear reactor. They were not in favor of such a strike for the following reasons. 1. It could incite the entire Muslim world to unite against Israel in a massive war that might wipe the Jewish state off of the map. 2. It could cause strong condemnation by the international community, including America and the Western world, because they were mostly supporting Iraq in its war against Iran. That was a war between 1980 and 1988. So this was the early stages of that war. Saddam Hussein was developing this reactor, this Osirak reactor. 3. The international condemnation could lead to harsh sanctions that could topple Israel's economy. And some additional adverse conditions were also mentioned, and the consensus among the leaders was this would be a bad move. So Menachem Begin thanked them all respectfully, and he asked them a question that he answered himself. And he said, if we don't destroy the reactor and Iraq gets a nuclear weapon, then, well, what then? And he said, it could mean the end of the Jewish state. He concluded by stating, we will strike Iraq, and we will strike them now. And the rest is history. They did strike, of course, the Osirak reactor, as we talked about earlier in the program. All right, let's move on to number 3 on our list. Israel has vowed to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Let's rewind the time clock back 11 years ago, back to 2013. Even at that time, Netanyahu was very concerned about Iran's developing nuclear program. Radio Free Europe reports Netanyahu, Israel won't allow Iran to get a nuclear bomb. Then 2 years later, in 2015, the JCPOA nuclear agreement with Iran was executed between the P5+1 and Iran, which Donald Trump withdrew from in May of 2018. And we look forward even into COVID in 2021, Netanyahu still echoed the same sentiments. Reuters reports Israel's Netanyahu says will not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. So we see that Israel has a long history of being greatly concerned about Iran's nuclear program, their aspirations to get a nuclear weapon, and they just will not allow that to happen. Okay, let's move on to number 4. Israel has destroyed Iran's primary missile defense systems, rendering Iran vulnerable to an Israeli strike on its nuclear facilities. On October 29, 2024, 100-plus jets left Israeli soil and accomplished several important things by attacking Iran. It was a retaliatory strike. They took out Iran's S-300 missile defense system, and they destroyed various missile production facilities, and this is also when they struck the top-secret nuclear research facility in Parchin. The Fox News headline reports on that October 29th, Israel's strike on Iran took out missile defense systems. The Islamic Republic is essentially naked. Israel launched an airstrike after Iran sent nearly 200 missiles targeting the Jewish state earlier this month amidst its war in Gaza. Shortly thereafter, the Defense Minister Katz said the time is right to hit Iran. This was picked up by the Jerusalem Post on November 11th, 2024. And what it says is Israel's incoming Defense Minister, Israel Katz, declared conditions are optimal for targeting Iran's nuclear program, citing recent successful Israeli airstrikes and broad national consensus. Okay, number 5. Israel will likely have America's approval through the presidency of Donald Trump. The Wall Street Journal reports this on December 13th of 2024. The Trump team weighs options, including airstrikes, to stop Iran's nuclear program. Advisors to President-elect concern economic pressure isn't enough to contain Tehran. They're considering military action. So it's logical to conclude that if Trump's already considering this option, if Israel goes forward, it would certainly have Trump's approval. Additionally, shortly after he won the election, on November 10th, Netanyahu, it was reported on JNS, Netanyahu spoke with Trump. He said, Trump and I see eye to eye on the Iranian threat. They spoke 3 times together, it says, on those phone calls. So we see again that they're on the same page when it comes to Iran. Interestingly, even dating back to 2019 when the Houthis attacked Saudi Arabia's oil fields, the Sun reports this, that Saudi Arabia refineries attacked by Houthis. Donald Trump draws up plans for military strike on Iran as Tehran vows to shoot down U.S. planes as warfares grow. So basically, this attack caused major disruption in Saudi Arabia's oil production capabilities. And he came up with a locked and loaded tweet, and this was picked up by the Sun. And they put together a map with the specific 9 different targets that you can see on this map of where perhaps these would be strategic targets to be attacked. It's interesting to note that 3 of these targets are actually going to be in the territory of Jeremiah's prophecy, which I'll be going over with you. That would be number 6 would be the Natanz area, the Natanz nuclear facility. Number 7 would be Isfahan. Number 8 would be Bushar. You see that the X is up there on number 3. That's the Parchin facility. So these targets were already on that map that Trump put together back in 2019. Okay, number 6, Israel will not likely face severe retaliation from Iran's proxies. Let's talk about Syria. It was a major proxy of Iran under the leadership of Bashar al-Assad. Assad allowed Iran to send weapons through Syria to Hezbollah, through shipping corridors through Syria from Iran into Lebanon. However, Assad's government has fallen and Assad has fled to Russia for asylum. This is acknowledged in the France 24 article on December 9th of 2024. Iran is in a position of unprecedented weakness after the fall of Assad in Syria. This has also adversely affected Hezbollah. Israel has destroyed the Syrian shipping corridor that Iran used when Assad fled. Israel moved in and destroyed the shipping corridor. And now it restricts Iran's ability to further supply Hezbollah with much-needed missiles and weapons that they need. New York Times picks this up on December 14th. Hezbollah loses supply route through Syria in a blow to it and to Iran. The militant group's leader admits that the toppling of Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, cut off an important land route from Iran. Hezbollah desperately needs those missiles because, according to an article in the Jerusalem Post back on November of 2024, the IDF reveals Hezbollah's missile arsenal is severely depleted since the beginning of the operations. The IDF estimates that 80% of Hezbollah's rocket arsenal, with a range of up to 40 kilometers, has been destroyed. So we see that Assad won't be a problem for retaliation. Syria won't be involved. Hezbollah is much weaker. They won't be able to do much. Hamas, we know, is also a serious issue. Here's the FDD article on September 11th. Hamas has been adversely affected as well. The Israeli defense minister at that time was Yoav Gallant. He says Hamas is destroyed as an organized fighting force. So like Hezbollah, they've become severely weakened in its war with Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah. What about the Houthis? According to Israel, and picked up by Reuters, Israel at the UN warns Houthis risk sharing the same fate as Hamas and Hezbollah. So the Houthis are going to go down as well, according to Israel's plans here. Israel, the United States, and are also attacking Yemen, where the Houthis are, working toward this end. Number 7, Israel has destroyed most of Syria's missile defense systems, which enables more freedom to fly safely to Iran over Syrian airspace. Here's an article from MEM. It says on December 13, 2024, Israel claims to have destroyed most of Syria's air defense systems, making it safer to fly over Syrian airspace en route to strike Iran. It says Israel destroys 85% of Syria's air defense systems. Number 8, Israel has to act now because Iran is on the fast track to obtaining several nuclear bombs. So with the diminishing of their proxies, the concern is, as a deterrence, Iran is going to move fast forward to achieve nuclear power, nuclear weapons. Here's an article in the Fox News, December 20th, 2024. Iran expands weaponization capabilities critical for employing nuclear bomb. Expert says Iran is moving forward towards building the bomb at a rapid pace. Okay, so in the first 8 reasons, we looked at the political, geopolitical, and military reasons it's likely that Israel will strike Iran's nuclear facilities. But now let's take a look at the biblical narrative. Perhaps this will come into play as well. Number 9, an ancient Bible prophecy in Jeremiah 49 verses 34 through 39 may foretell of such a nuclear strike. Now, according to this biblical prophecy issued around 596 BC, found in Jeremiah 49, a disaster is going to happen in Iran in the latter days. Jeremiah 49 verses 37 through 38 declares this disaster is caused by God as a direct result of bad Iranian leadership doing something or intending to do something that fiercely angers him. So we're going to find that Iran has double trouble in the latter years. Iran is the dual end-time prophecies. Many of you are very familiar with Ezekiel's writing in Ezekiel chapter 38, where he identifies Persia in the Gog of Magog invasion, but maybe some of you are a little less familiar with what his contemporary Jeremiah wrote around 596 BC. Now, Ezekiel wrote about a decade after Jeremiah wrote this prophecy. He wrote Ezekiel 38 after that. So you see, Elam is a territory hugging the Persian Gulf in the peach color on the map, and the rest of Iran, modern-day Iran, would be where Persia is, what Ezekiel wrote about. Now, I talked about those strategic targets that Donald Trump had on his map in a prior slide. This is also the location of Natanz, Isfahan, Bushehr nuclear reactor, and Shiraz. Now, Isfahan is Iran's largest nuclear research facility. Natanz is Iran's primary enrichment facility. It's about 75 miles due north of Isfahan. Shiraz is the home of the Special Weapons and Missile Facility in Iran. And of course, the Bushehr nuclear reactor is their crown jewel nuclear reactor in Iran. It's also located there as well. Now, Iran put forward a video that looks like the missiles shot from this area. This is where they harbor their underground missile silos, their portable rocket launchers, their ballistic missiles are buried underground there to be launched at Israel. And this is one of the videos they put forward that seems to come out of this area, the closest area to launch from to get to Israel. This is also where they have their hypersonic ballistic missile. There's a headline from the Jerusalem Post about that. It can get to Israel in 400 seconds, which is 6.66 minutes. It's 400 seconds to Tel Aviv. Iranian media publishes a Hebrew hypersonic missile threat. That was back in November of 2022. So they've even got more advanced missiles since that time. So the threat is they can get to Israel in less than 7 minutes. Now, as we have done our historical research here, there's no evidence that this prophecy has found final fulfillment. Thus, it's still an impending prophecy waiting to happen, probably, in my estimation, in the near future, maybe as a result or part of an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, especially in that area, prime targets as we look back on Donald Trump's map. So you can read why we don't believe this has found fulfillment in an article I wrote at prophecydepot.com. It's free online to read. Has this prophecy of Elam in Jeremiah 49 verses 34 through 39 been historically fulfilled? And the answer is no, it has not. There's no evidence put forward by historically or by any of our colleagues that show us that this has been fulfilled. Therefore, it remains unfulfilled and could happen, probably in my estimation, in the very near future. Okay, at this point I'm going to introduce you to this prophecy. It's only 6 verses in Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 34 through 39. I think it's important that you read it because it's a prophecy that you might find fulfillment in the very near future. But I'm going to provide you with a summary of what's being said in the prophecy as I understand it. It begins with, it says, I'm going to bring a disaster upon them because of my fierce anger. In other words, something happens where the Lord is fiercely angry with Iran, and it's going to bring about a disaster, a major disaster. Why is he going to bring about a disaster? Why is he fiercely angry with Iran? Because they've got bad leadership. It says he's going to destroy from there the kings and the princes. And he would not destroy good leadership, but this is bad leadership. It's fiercely angering him. Why is this leadership angering the Lord? Because they want to launch something lethal somewhere, and the Lord's going to have to prevent that from happening. It says he's going to break the bow of Elam at the foremost of their might, meaning he's going to prevent their missile launching capabilities. They want to launch something somewhere at the foremost of their might, probably a nuclear scenario. And God's got to prevent that from happening. I would suspect that they want to launch a nuclear weapon at Israel, and the Lord's going to prevent that from happening. 4, he's going to bring the 4 winds from the 4 quarters of heaven and scatter them toward all those winds, meaning whatever the disaster happens, it causes apparently a humanitarian crisis because there's going to be a worldwide dispersion of the indigenous affected population in this area on the west coast of Iran and the Elam territory. So it could be a nuclear-related scenario. He says he's going to cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies and before those who seek their life, meaning at the time this happens, Iran will have enemies, plural, a menu of enemies. Israel's one, of course, the United States, with Donald Trump is going to be another. Some of the Gulf cooperative states, Saudi Arabia and them, are concerned about Iran's nuclear program, etc. So we already see that's in play. He says he'll send the sword after them until he has consumed them. That's a typology in the Bible of a war. So it looks like a military confrontation. It's going to be used to cause about this disaster. Perhaps, again, maybe nuclear. Those are the bad news. The first 4 verses are bad news for the Iranians, but there's some good news. In the next 2 points, he's going to set his throne in Elam. And in the latter days, that's why we know it's an end times prophecy, he'll bring back or restore the fortunes of those exiles from Elam. So the good news is, ultimately, there will be a restored group of Iranians who come back into their territory. This will happen in the millennium. If those who survive the tribulation period, who put their faith in Jesus Christ, they will be restored to this area. And there will be a remnant of Iranians, just like there will be a remnant of Jews, a remnant of Jordanians, Egyptians, Assyrians, and even more and more in other parts of the country, of the world, rather. Now, the interesting thing is it says, I will set my throne in Elam. It's the Hebrew word kaseh. It shows up in Isaiah 66:1 as, heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. So it's talking about a literal throne. Jeremiah 3:17, same word at that time. In the millennium, Jerusalem shall be called the throne of the Lord. So we see that it's going to say his throne there as well. Now, is that really a literal throne? It can also mean a position of authority. But meanwhile, those last 2 points have many Iranians who are converting to Christianity through miracles, dreams, visions, and healings. It's the fastest growing evangelical population in the world. Many of them are ecstatic about these 2 verses because they're very encouraging for these Iranians. Okay, so now that you've been introduced to a summary of the Elam prophecy, let's take a look at these strategic nuclear target sites to see how they fit into Elam, to make sure we're pinning the right tail on the right territory of these sites of Isfahan, Natanz, Shiraz, and Bushehr. Again, strategic targets that we saw on that map of Donald Trump's when he tweeted back in 2019. So Isfahan. Isfahan province is one of Iran's 31 provinces. Isfahan is the capital city in this province and is Iran's 3rd biggest city, hosting a population of about 1.5 million people. Historically, how do we know it goes with Elam? We'll read a couple quotes here. Located in the foothills of the Zagros Mountains, Let's talk about the Zagros Mountains for a moment. The Zagros Mountains have been a geographic barrier that always isolated Elam from Persia. So he's talking about the Zagros Mountains here, located in the foothills of these Zagros Mountains. Isfahan is a city formed at a major crossroads of trans-Asia trade and military routes. As such a city emerged gradually over the course of the Elamite civilization between 2700 and 1600 BCE. The artifacts found at Isfahan date back to the Paleolithic period. So you see the link on where you can read that and find that as a footnote. Let's look at another one. In the pre-Islamic era, Isfahan was home to the settlement that developed into the Elamite civilization, again back to 2700 BC, and was the home of the Median dynasty until Cyrus the Great unified Persian and Median lands into the Achaemenid Empire in 600 BC. Again, you see the source. So we see that Isfahan does fit in the territory of Elam. Again, it's a strategic nuclear target. Matter of fact, Israel has already hit Isfahan in its first retaliatory strike of Iran back in April of 2024. Here's a headline from the BBC. Israel-Iran attack damaged seen at airbase in Isfahan. So that's again Iran's largest nuclear research facility. We can pin the tail on that territory of Elam with Isfahan. Let's look at Natanz. It's also located in the Isfahan province and is about 75 miles north of Isfahan, which is also in Elam, so we can know that that's exactly also where in Elam where Natanz is, because it's in that Isfahan province at the foothills of the Zagros mountain area, that province. Down to the southwest, you got the Bushehr nuclear reactor. That's clearly in Elam. The PersiaAdvisor.com tells us the oldest evidence of settlement in Bushehr province dates back to the era of Elam. Again, those dates were 2700 to 539 BC and ancient pre-Iranian civilization. Okay, so that's Natanz and Isfahan and Bushehr. What about Shiraz? Shiraz is in the province of Fars. Now, Fars is in Elam. Here's the quote from dailyhistory.com. The Elamite homeland is a region known as Khuzestan in southwestern Iran. The geographical and political center of most of Elamite history was the city of Susa and its surrounding environs. However, the region of Fars, the Zagros Mountains, and Anshan were also considered part of the historical Elam territory there. So we pin the tail on those territories of those four strategic sites. They could be the subject of an Israeli airstrike on Iran's nuclear facilities. The Elam territory is highly dangerous for Israel to get through. That's where all those missiles are. They've got to hit that area, and they've got to hit it hard. So as we summarize, let's look at this prophecy. You got Natanz, Isfahan, Bushehr, and Shiraz there. It's also where the underground missile silos and portable rocket launchers are, and the hypersonic ballistic missiles. Somehow the Lord is fiercely angry, and there's going to be a disaster in this territory. It appears as though it could be nuclear, and that would be the concern there. Now, also, I want to let you know this is a highly earthquake seismic zone. There's a couple of examples of how dangerous it is also. This looks like this prophecy is going to be dealing with a war because the sword will be involved biblically. But maybe there will be an earthquake in tandem or causing this, we don't know. But here's an example. Historically, in April 10th of 2013, there was a 6.8 earthquake in that Bushehr region right there, Bushehr province. 37 people were killed and 850 people were injured. A few days later, down south of that, there was a 7.7 earthquake, killed 35. As a result of those two earthquakes, the states across the Gulf, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which would include Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, etc., they were very concerned because 2/3 of the world's desalination water plants are right there, treatment plants. Those countries are rich in oil, but they're very poor in water quality, so they issued this statement, very concerned about this. Should there be a nuclear radioactive leak caused by an earthquake or maybe a military invasion on the Bushehr reactor? Here's what they said in their study shortly after those earthquakes. In the event of a radiation leak, clouds of radioactive material will drift to the GCC states in just 15 hours. While the radiation would affect only about 10% of the Iranian population, in the GCC states, 40 to 100% of these populations would be affected. And that's because the wind patterns would blow that radiation over within 15 hours. They could happen to affect those countries adversely. They're very concerned about this, a potential radiation leak over there. It is a nuclear disaster waiting to happen. Now, as I conclude, I've written a book about this prophecy that you can get a hold of called Nuclear Showdown in Iran, revealing the ancient prophecy of Elam. It also comes with a DVD, and it's all about the Jeremiah chapter 49 Elam prophecy. So in closing, if the complete destruction of Elam has not happened historically, then logically this means that this prophecies of Elam in Jeremiah chapter 49, 34 through 39, will take place sometime in the future, perhaps even the nearest future. Who could God be so fiercely angry with in modern-day Iran? Could it be the rogue Islamic regime that wants to wipe Israel off the map by using nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles? In Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 35, God says he's going to bring about a great disaster in western Iran. It causes a calamity that necessitates the worldwide dispersion of the indigenous population. Could this likely allude to a future great catastrophe in Iran that destroys their missile launching capabilities and some nuclear sites in the territory of Elam, those sites we looked at, Isfahan, Natanz, Bushehr, and Shiraz? Read Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 34 through 39, and draw your own conclusions. But in my estimation, this is a prophecy we should be watching for to find fulfillment in the very near future. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned to watch more cutting-edge programs on Bible prophecy on this channel.
Someday soon, the beautiful country of Israel will be surrounded by enemies on all sides. A series of devastating battles are coming, some quite familiar like Armageddon, but others far less familiar. These future wars can be hard to decipher. The countries named in Scripture have different names today. So who can we trust to rightly divide the word? One of the world's experts on these end-time wars is our friend Bill Salus. To call Bill an expert on these future wars would be a great understatement. In Bill's latest work, The Future War Prophecies, he examines these prophecies, a roadmap to the future: the prophesied destruction of Damascus, the Psalm 83 war, and the coming sneak attack by Russia, Iran, and other Islamic enemies. It's the most comprehensive book ever written on these prophecies. Bill's book or the companion DVD are available for your gift of $25 or more, with shipping included in the USA. Order the book and DVD together for $45, and as always, we'll include a surprise gift as our way of saying thanks for supporting God's ministry. For those of you who appreciate Bill's 12 years of end times research, he's released his 5 previous books and 5 previous DVDs on a flash drive he calls the Left Behind Survival Kit. It also includes a Bible and a unique DVD, Tim LaHaye's Last Prophecy Message. All this powerful information is available on this computer flash drive for your gift of $50 or more, a $200 value, with shipping included anywhere in the USA. For our international friends, please know that additional shipping costs may apply. As conflicts increase all over the world, we know that the Bible speaks of wars and rumors of wars. Soon, these end-time prophecies will explode on the world and reality will set in. We are living in exciting times that make us believe that Jesus is coming very soon. Thanks for watching today, and thanks for your faithful support of this ministry.